Most people aren't stuck because they don't know what to do. They're stuck because a part of them wants change, and another part is fighting to stay the same. And I think that this is the conversation that nobody's having. And honestly, this is why so many people feel so freaking exhausted right now because they're trying to force behavior change while the identity underneath it still believes this is who I am. This is what I do. This is what's familiar. And actually, this is what's safe. And your brain will always pull you back toward what feels familiar, even if familiar is painful. And that's why people can know exactly what to do and still not do it consistently. They know how to lose the weight. They know they should stop emotionally eating. They know they should go to bed earlier. They know they should stop procrastinating. They they know they should leave that relationship. They know they should start that business. They know. Information is not the problem anymore. Because if information worked, everybody would already be thriving. But they're not. Because information does not automatically change identity. And identity is what drives the behavior. And that's the real conversation. I see this consistently and constantly in my work. People come to me thinking the problem is food or motivation, or they need more discipline, or they just need more consistency. But underneath all of that, it's usually something much deeper. And actually, you know what? It is something much deeper. It's old survival patterns, it's old emotional wiring, old beliefs, old identities, old nervous system responses. And most of it was created before they were even consciously aware enough to question it. And this is the part that people are missing. You did not consciously decide most of the things running your life right now. You learned them, you adapted, you survived them. Maybe you learned, I have to earn love. I'm not enough. I'm too much. Success creates pressure. Resting means I'm lazy. Food equals comfort. Mm, People leave. I always fail. I have to stay small. I have to prove myself. Nothing ever works for me. And then people wonder why they keep recreating the same outcomes over and over and over again. Because the subconscious mind organizes behavior around identity, who you actually think and believe you are. The brain's constantly trying to prove your identity true. It's constantly trying to prove who you think and believe you are true, even when that identity actually is hurting you. And that's why somebody can desperately want to change while unconsciously fighting it at the same time. And this is where people get super frustrated because consciously they want the new life, but subconsciously the old identity still feels way safer. And familiarity feels safe to the nervous system, even when that familiar is chaos, even when that familiar is stress, even when that familiar is self sabotage. That's why people say, I don't know why I keep doing this. But there is a reason. And it usually has nothing to do with laziness. Most people are not lazy, they're divided. One part wants expansion, and another part is trying to protect them from change. Because change feels unfamiliar, and unfamiliar can feel dangerous to the nervous system. That's why sometimes forcing yourself harder usually does not work long term. You can white knuckle behavior for a while. You definitely can white knuckle behavior for a while. And you can force motivation temporarily. And you can control yourself for a season. But eventually, the nervous system pulls people back towards that familiar identity and what feels safer. And that's why people lose weight and regain it. That's why they start businesses and then they sabotage them. That's why they can find healthy relationships and then destroy them. That's why they can get momentum and then suddenly disappear. Same pattern, just different areas of life. And this is where Mindshift the Mindsh, that's where this method becomes so different for people. I'm not just looking at behavior. I'm looking at what identity is driving the behavior. What emotional state keeps repeating the behavior? What nervous system pattern is attached to that behavior? And what subconscious below your awareness belief keeps recreating that same reality? Because once you become aware of the actual pattern, now, now you have the power. And most people only notice the pattern after it already happened, after the binge, after the emotional reaction, after the shutdown, after the fuck it moment. But real change starts when you can catch it during the moment. That changes everything because awareness interrupts that automatic loop. And honestly, that's where most people start becoming creators of their life instead of reactors of their life. Most people are spending their entire life problem solving their current reality. Creators operate differently. Creators decide who they're becoming first. Then they resolve the resistance that appears between where they are and where they choose to go. And that's a completely different way of living. And this is important. Mind shifting is not pretending problems don't exist. It's stopping the habit of building your identity around the problems. There's a difference, a huge difference. Because if your identity becomes the overwhelmed one, the anxious one, the emotional eater, the procrastinator, the failure, the rejected one, the person who always struggles, then your subconscious will organize your behavior around proving that identity true, even unconsciously. And that's why some people stay stuck for decades while constantly trying new strategies. And the strategy is not the root problem, the identity is. And once identity begins shifting, behavior starts naturally changing. And not perfectly, and definitely not overnight, but naturally. People start saying things like, I don't react the same anymore. I don't even want that food like I did before. I finally spoke up. I finally stopped abandoning myself. I actually followed through. I feel different because they are different. And this is where science is finally catching up. Neuroplasticity, nervous system regulation, predictive coding, epigenetics, visualization research, memory reconsolidation. Your brain is constantly wiring around repeated thoughts, repeated emotional states, repeated experiences, and repeated identities. What you repeatedly rehearse becomes more automatic. That's why if someone spends years rehearsing stress, shame, failure, scarcity, self criticism, Their nervous system and their brain become efficient at producing those states. But the beautiful part is the brain can also rewire. The nervous system can learn safety. The body can stop living in survival mode. The identity can change. Who you think and believe you are can change. But it takes awareness, repetition, emotional congruence, and new choices made consistently enough to build a new internal reality. And that's why this work matters so much. Because people think they need another freaking diet, when really they need a different internal operating system. And honestly, once people finally see the real pattern running their life, they can never fully unsee it. And that awareness alone, right there, starts to change people. Because now they stop making everything mean I'm broken. And instead, they start realizing I've been operating from old programming. And that changes the conversation completely. And this is the part I need people to hear. I need you to hear this. You're not weak because you struggle. You're not failing because change feels hard. You're trying to create a new life from an old identity and an old nervous system. And that's why this work is deeper than motivation. Motivation fades. Identity is what's driving the bus. So the real question becomes, who are you rehearsing being every single day? That overwhelmed version, the victim, the reactor, that exhausted problem solver, or the creator? Because your life eventually starts organizing around the identity you repeatedly practice and embody. And that's why Mindshift the Mindsh changes everything. And not because it gives people more information, because it helps people finally see, interrupt, and shift the unconscious patterns that have been driving their life all along.